Good afternoon to all the
Yes, you're audible.
participants here. Before we start, I would like to mention here that it's our pleasure to have Professor Dipankar Banerjee today as our speaker. He is a very famous Indian astronomical scientist, and I would request Professor Maitri Bhattacharya to introduce Professor Banerjee. And before that, I would like to request all the participants here to keep your microphone on mute mode. And in a while, Professor Banerjee will start presenting his presentation, and he will get an icon against his name, Dipankar Banerjee presenting. So what you have to do is you have to pin that icon, and then you will get the presentation on your screen. So at the end of the seminar, we would have some question answer session. And if you have questions, you are free to ask. And Professor Banerjee will certainly try to answer all of them. So I request Professor Bhattacharya to introduce Professor Banerjee, please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I welcome Dr. Dipankar Bandyopadhyay for this seminar. Am I audible, Abhijit?
Yes, madam.
Okay. So it's a very happy occasion that we are getting Dr. Dipankar with us, because we have already visited last year also. We visited his institute at Bangalore, and Dipankar is very much with JBNSTS, and now it's our pride that he's the co-investigator of the Punch mission by NASA. And also that Dr. Dipankar Banerjee is now, he's the director of Aryabhatta Research Institute and Observatory Sciences. So it's he is really a renowned astrophysicist. For our young scholars and young students and well-wishers of JBNSTS, so it's a happy occasion that a renowned astrophysicist like Dr. Dipankar will be addressing all this gathering. And now in this new normal life, the digital education and digital lecture is always our new avenues to build up contact between us, among us. So now we know that we are all very much interested to explore the solar science and the star, our nearest star, the sun. Mission named Polarimeter to unify the corona and helicosphere is expected to be launched in 2022. And it's really a great thing that Dr. Dipankar Bandyopadhyay is the co-investigator of this Punch program. So I welcome Dr. Dipankar for taking his enthusiasm to interact with our students. And I know that after his lecture, the students will be encouraged to ask their questions and to discuss. Dr. Dipankar is a legendary speaker, and whenever I listen to his lecture, I'm really fond of him. So Dipankar, please your lecture.
Thank you very much, madam, for your very kind words. I do not know whether I can live up to the expectations you have set already. So let me first try to share my screen, and just let us confirm that you are able to see that fully. Okay, so my presentation. Yeah, you have to just confirm me that you are able to see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
We can see.
Yeah. So, as it has been mentioned in this new normal, to have a sort of uninterrupted conversation. So, although I normally prefer to have a question anytime during my talk.
Yes, Dipankar, we can see the presentation screen,
okay.
But you're...
Yeah. But
somehow connection has got lost. You please carry on. Yeah.
Okay. So you are able to hear me continuous,
Yes,
right?
perfectly okay.
All
Fine.
right. Okay. Okay. So what I wanted to just set a platform that as it has been already pointed out, that please keep your microphone muted, because otherwise always there is some background noise from one end or other. But if you want to pose a question, I have no problem. Just do it one by one, because there are far too many people,
You can
and
take.
I don't see the hand raised or something, which is not there in Google Meet. I can't see that. But maybe Abhijit, if you can moderate these questions and
Yeah, I will
interrupt
do
me,
it. I will
yeah,
do it.
that will be useful or helpful for me.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay. Okay, let me try my best to sort of give this lecture in a sort of almost a blindfold mode. So what I actually plan to talk today is about our nearest star, the sun, and its life cycle, because you think that the sun is always there and it is not making any changes, or there are no changes happening in different time scales, but that's not true actually. Sun is a very dynamic star, and there are a lot of changes to happen on the sun on different time scale, from seconds, minutes, hours, months, years, and then to millennia. So what I will be talking today is more about these short-term and long-term changes on the sun, and what are the sources of these changes. But again, as you can imagine, my task is slightly difficult, because I'm not able to see all of you. Sometimes, when I see a reaction, then I understand that, whatever I'm saying is sort of, you are able to follow that, or you are able to understand that. What it means is, to chip in the lecture at a certain level is a big challenge, because, we are doing research at a certain, with certain background, and you have a variety of, training from different branches of science. So my task is more difficult in this new normal, I would say. So I will try to give a overview, although it has been, because I discovered that from the poster later on, that it has been mentioned about the Punch mission, but I'm actually not going to talk about the Punch mission much today at all, because these are very highly technical mission. The details to understand about the mission and all that need certain solar physics background. So I will be happy to do that in the next occasion. If some of you are following my lecture, maybe next lecture it will be easier for you to at least appreciate what I'm talking about and all that. So what I'm going to talk about is more of our nearest sun, and particularly to one particular things called sunspots. So I'm going to tell you the story of the sunspots today. Before I go into the subject, I would like to point out where I am. Are you able to see my cursor, Abhijit?
Yes, I can see. It's
Okay, very
on the
good.
platform. Right.
Very good, very good. So right now I am sitting on this top of the hill. It's called Manora Peak, which is 10 kilometers south of Nainital city, and my office is in one of the buildings here. We also have another observatory in Devasthal, which is about 50 kilometers east of Nainital city. So this is the most modern observatory in the country, and it hosts the largest telescope in Asia now. So in some occasion, if you are interested, of course, I can talk more about those facilities as well. Of course, you are most welcome to visit us as well when situation permits. So JB NSTS fellows normally travel, they do a Bharat Darshan. And I have been interacting with JB NSTS fellow for many years in Bangalore, because I was at Bangalore for last almost more than a decade, and very recently moved into Aryabhatta Institute in Nainital. So this is what is Manora Peak. This is the precisely this is the window you can see of my office, where I am now at this point of time. We also have here a 104 centimeters Sampurnanand telescope, which was way back, installed here in 1972. This was a UP state observatory, but again, after the UP state was divided to Uttarakhand, then Government of India, Department of Science and Technology took over these institutes. So this is an institute under central government now. We also have a 15 centimeter solar telescope, which looks at the solar flares. So this is the main facility for solar observation from this side. Then there is a half-a-meter Smith telescope installed around 2009. So these are somewhat older facilities. And as you can imagine, Nainital being a very popular tourist destination, the night sky has been affected because of too much of human influence. And we had to move to a different site in Devasthal. So these are the telescope which is there next to my office. This is a solar flare monitoring telescope on the top of this, dome, what you see here. Now I am showing you pictures about Devasthal, which is about 2.5 kilometers above the sea level. We have 1.3 meter optical telescope, which was operation since 2010. And this is the nation's pride now, the 3.6 meter Devasthal optical telescope, which was inaugurated or initiated by none other than Narendra Modi ji. And, this is our pride. And this is something which is, a 2 meter liquid mirror telescope, where we are just about to get the first light. It is a bit delayed because of the current conditions. This is the telescope, and you see it's a beautiful sight because the entire Himalayan and Kumaon range, you see it most of the time whenever the sky is, clear. It's a spectacular location, actually. We do observe, supernova, gamma ray burst, active galactic nuclei, and mostly for transient studies. Again, I'm not going to talk about any of this, but I thought, before I start my subject area, let me show you some pictures where I am, because this is very exciting. We feel very, privileged to be here, and I'll be happy to host you in near future. So this is the telescope, which is currently the biggest in this part of the globe. And so now let me get into my subject area, which is called the sun. The sun, like all stars, is a very dynamic star. It's always active, always changing. And why do we study sun? Because more we learn about it, the more we learn about other stars. Because this is the only star which is pretty close to us. And this is the only star we can see the details on the surface of the star. Basically, in the sky, most of the other objects what you study is as a point object. You really cannot resolve the details on the surface of the star. You see, of course, you can see the moon, and you can see the moon's, valleys and craters and so on, because it is very close to you. So as far as the stars are concerned, it is the only star where we could find such great details. So this is a movie from a UV telescope. This is a NASA, telescope, which gives us a, much closer view. And as you can see here, this is nothing but a, huge explosion in the sun. They're also called flares, and a huge amount of material is actually thrown into the interplanetary space. And in fact, the Punch mission, which we were talking about, or you got mentioned, is going to look at some of these explosions as well. But that I will talk about sometime later. Sun is a normal star because it is middle-aged. It's so-called a main sequence star. You don't have to worry about these jargons like spectral type and so on. Essentially, what it means is that the stars are formed from interstellar medium by, closely, coming together, and then they, somewhere in some time, the nuclear reaction starts in the interior, and then only, a star is born. But then the star undergoes its own, life cycle, and then it becomes a very big, in terms of the sun, it will become a red giant, and then you can have a supernova explosion, and finally a, white dwarf, and so on. So I'm not actually going to talk about that stellar evolution also. So that is a sort of billions of years of life cycle of sun. So that is again one can study. Sun is a special star because it is the only star on which we can resolve the spatial scales on which fundamental processes takes place. This is already I have indicated, but again stated here. Sun is also a special star because it provides almost all the energy to the Earth. Our existence is because of the presence of the sun at an appropriate distance away from us. We know that. Sun is also a special star. It provides us with a unique laboratory in which to learn about various branches of physics. If I would have given a lecture to only physics students, I would have just, spent next 15, 20 minutes to just highlight that whatever different branches of physics, you name it, nuclear physics, atomic physics, molecular physics, gravitational physics, different branches, particle physics, all these physics branches, it has its direct applications in the case of the sun. And you be also aware that in physics becomes only, a hypothesis or a theory becomes only, accepted or approved when there is an experimental verification of that physics. That's very important thing in physics. But then certain conditions of those, physical conditions, like, if you want to maintain millions of degrees of temperature, you want a density which is very, very high, or you want a condition where very strong magnetic field, kilogauss or megagauss kind of magnetic field. All these conditions to achieve in the laboratory is very challenging. You almost cannot achieve that. Whereas in the stellar context, or in the sun itself, it provides you those conditions quite naturally, because in the sun, solar atmosphere, we have millions of Kelvin. You will see, I will talk about sunspot, where the sunspots are actually concentrated magnetic field regions of kilogauss strength. In fact, you have heard about, plasma confinements and tokamaks and so on and so forth. It's very expensive to build a, few meters tokamak in a laboratory environment. Whereas in the sun, the sunspots are a few thousand kilometers size. So they're natural tokamaks there. So if you want to verify your theory for such specific huge tokamak conditions, you have to go to the sun. So really, sun provides us, a unique laboratory environment. So some of us, actually, we studied only physics up to our master's level. I had theoretical physics in master's. I had even condensed matter physics in my special paper. Then I went for astrophysics research, and I found, sun to be a good laboratory for my, interests on physics. So that's how I chose, sun as a, or solar physics as my career. So I'm just giving you this, insight, so that, some of you who do not have any exposure to astrophysics, can think about it in future, because none of us in our time had any exposure to astronomy at all. So it all started after our completion of master's degree. So you don't bother that, you don't know much about, stars or galaxies and so on. In fact, most of you are much more aware of things, than, me at your age. So the sun is located in a spiral arm of our galaxy in the so-called Orion arms. Some 30,000 light years from the center. This is where the sun is. These are called different arms of our own galaxy, the Milky Way. The sun orbits the center of the Milky Way in about 225 million years. The solar system has a velocity of 230 kilometers per second. So the entire solar system is also moving. Yeah, nothing is actually fixed in the sky. Everything moves. Our galaxy, our own galaxy, this is the Milky Way, consists of about 100 billion other stars, and there are about 100 billion other galaxies. So think about our limitations of knowledge. I'm only talking about one star, and then there are 100 billion other stars in the galaxy, and then there are other 100 billion other galaxies also. The question is, probably individually, we cannot study so many different objects, right? So many different stars. So in the case of the astronomy, people do more statistical way. They look at it clusters. In a cluster, you have, millions of stars in one location in the sky. So they study it in a collective manner, but star, in terms of the sun, there's only one guy close to us. So we just focus all our attention to that fellow. Sun has inspired mythology in many cultures, including ancient Egyptians, Aztecs, Native Americans, Indians, and the Chinese. So we do have a lot of history about studying sun, and some of that I will talk about today as well. Sun is 333,000 times more massive than the Earth and contains 99.86% mass of the entire solar system. So you can also imagine, for the entire solar system with all the planets and the satellites and so on, sun is so much heavier than everything else that in a many body problem, everything is controlled by the sun. Of course, before Galileo, we didn't know, or before, not Galileo, even before, we didn't know that, the Earth is at the center and so on. So the Copernicus and all these people made fundamental contributions and understanding of our universe altogether. So it consists of 78% hydrogen, 20% helium, and 2% of other elements. and total energy radiated is 100 billion tons of TNT. This is a thermonuclear, unit. You can think about 100 billions of hydrogen bomb is getting exploded inside the sun every second. So thankfully, sun is, some distance away from us. Otherwise, I think we would have never, happened here. As I mentioned, today, I will talk about mostly sunspots. What are sunspots? Of course, this famous guy, Galileo Galilei in 1610, using one of the first, that time, just few years back, some of these Newtonian telescopes were discovered, was the first person to observe and record the path of sunspots across the sun for several weeks. What he did was, he was recording this, these guys, these are called sunspots. And what he found that one day, he find these spots to be here. Subsequent day, he found that the spot was on the right side and so on and so forth. So I will come to that. How did he, interpret some of these things subsequent to that? He also discovered some of these movies actually has some display, conflict. It looks like it's a transfer rate with Google Meet, whatever it is transferring. We'll check that. So because this is a movie, I don't think it is playing adequately in this way. So anyway, so Galileo Galilei noticed that already the sunspot move across the solar disk in accordance with the rotation of a round body. So what he observed, since this movie is not playing, I will just say what it is he observed. So suppose in one day, he finds that the sunspot is here. Next day, he found the sunspot was there. Subsequent day, he found the sunspot is there, and so on. So that gives you an indication that this object, sun, is rotating around its own axis. So this was, a remarkable discovery that, of course, he did say that these are dark spots on that. Of course, at that point of time, he didn't know that these dark spots are nothing but concentration of magnetic field. That came many centuries after. But he did, using this as a tracer, he could say that sun is rotating around its own axis. Of course, also he didn't know that sun is not rotating as a rigid body. He just, commented that, it is rotating around its own axis. Now, what are sunspots? Sunspots are magnetic structures. This is bad because the movies are not able to transfer through this browser window, it looks like, because the Google Meet uses the, I guess you are not able to see the movies, right, Abhijit? Abhijit, can you confirm that you are seeing any changes in the pictures?
No, we cannot see the change in picture. If you go into the, what I should say, the presentation full screen mode, then perhaps this...
Yeah, now I am in the full screen mode, so that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, now actually I came out of the full screen. There also it is not playing because the first two movies played. I'm not sure what is the problem is. Let me just play this. This is also not playing. That's a bit strange. Okay, can I just close the slide and just bring it back again?
Yes,
just
yes,
give me a second.
You can play the movie separately.
Oh, no, I mean, I will just open the things again and then probably... Sorry about that, the technical difficulty.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
No, sorry, it's in a different folder. Because I have lots of slides, I mean, lots of movies, and if they don't play it, I feel sad about it. Is the presentation also gone now?
Yeah, presentation, again it has come now.
Okay, let me just go to that slide and see whether you can, because some of the movies were playing earlier. I'm not sure why it is not playing. Yeah, now it is playing.
It's playing, yeah.
Yeah, so let me go to the full
mode.
Yeah, it's playing now. Is it all right?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So as you can see from this movie, that this sunspot, what he did, he just, looked at, his drawing. So these are hand-drawn things, and as you can see that these sunspots also are, changing with time. So they grow, they disappear, and so on. And this movie is, of course, made from his own drawing, and it gives an impression that sun is rotating about its own axis, and so on. So sunspots are magnetic structures, and that emerge from beneath the surface. The white lines represent the magnetic field lines. As you know, in your lab experiments and so on, that magnetic field, if you take a bar magnet, the magnetic field lines comes out of the North Pole and goes into the South Pole. This is the imaginary, lines of force, right? This is all animation, okay? But what happens is, because of the presence of the magnetic field, the plasma is also actually trapped inside that. So what we see normally in our images of the sun, if in case, we are able to take in this kind of, UV images. So this is a sort of animation drawn from live images taken from satellites, but we don't see these white lines. What we see is, some kind of plasma confinement. I will show you some pictures later on this. And what happens is, so these, regions where these flux tubes, these magnetic field lines, the concentrations of these magnetic field lines are also termed as magnetic flux tubes. And these flux tubes, as you have seen from this movie, is actually coming from underneath the sun. I have not had chance to talk about the, inside the sun, but essentially inside the sun, it is convective. And here what happens is, these are the magnetic flux tubes which are formed underneath the solar surface. And because these magnetic flux tubes are actually lighter, they're like balloon. If you experience if you just leave a light balloon, it floats, right? It goes into the upper atmosphere. So here also, these flux tubes, they are actually lighter than the surrounding, and that's why they come up. And then when they penetrate through the solar surface, they form the sunspots. So that's how the sunspots are formed. And when we see images on the surface of the sun, then we will see this. But then these sunspots are connected by magnetic field lines, and this movie shows that sometimes these magnetic field lines are twisted and entangled and so on and so forth. When that happens, then there is a big explosion happens. This is called a process called magnetic reconnection, and then you have big flares. So you're probably heard about this terminology, flares. So flares are just nothing but because of these magnetic cancellation events, and then eventually you saw some material is ejected out of the sun and so on. This is a closer view of a sunspot. So with modern telescope, we can see such details of a sunspot. What Galileo saw 400 years back with his small telescope as a dirt on the solar image, now we can do much better studies with the current telescopes what we have. So here you could see that there is a deep core which is called the umbra, where actually magnetic field comes very, very vertically up. And there are also magnetic structures which are, fine little threads kind of thing. These are called penumbra. And then background, what you see is actually the direct manifestation of convection. As I said, sun is nothing like a big plasma blob, and underneath the solar surface, there are 30% of the interior is fully convective. It's like a boiling soup. So if you remember the picture of a boiling soup, at the surface of the soup, you will find these bubbles kind of things all over. So they form a kind of network pattern. And here exactly that's what you see here. This kind of cellular pattern, they are called, granules and so on. So there are lots of things which one can study from this kind of observation and directly compare with your physical, understanding about convection theory. So again, the people who work on chaos, those who work for convection theories in the nature and so on, this is a natural laboratory for them. This is what you see, a pair of sunspots. Also from the movie, if you recall, that sunspots always comes as a pair. This is like a dipole property. You cannot have a monopole. You always have to have a North Pole and a South Pole. So here, you see this in the surface of the sun, which is called the photosphere. If I go slightly higher up in the atmosphere, this is about 1200 kilometers above the atmosphere. This is taken from a calcium, a filter. I will talk about it, why we need to take, images of the sun in different filters, because different filters allows you to map different layers of the atmosphere of the sun. So this is again an example of 1200 kilometer. I mean, suppose, you are taking a picture of Earth at 1200 kilometer from the surface, you can imagine that the picture will be slightly different than the surface. But here you can see that this sunspot looks like very, very well connected. They go up very high in the atmosphere and all the way to the heliosphere and so on and so forth. So this is a picture in the lower chromosphere. Then we go upper chromosphere, like, Earth atmosphere, you have different layers, stratosphere, ionosphere, and so on. In the solar context also, we have atmosphere of the sun. And these are the different, atmospheric pictures which I am showing you. This is again a H-alpha picture. These images are all taken from, space satellites. There are some ground-based observations also available. Why I'm putting these in the perspective is what I'm going to talk about a historical data, what we have in our own country from Kodaikanal for last 100 years in all these wavelengths. Then if you take an image of the sun of that same region with the X-ray from again a satellite, then you see the corona, which is in the 2000 kilometer from the surface or higher. Incidentally, this is the good corona. The name of the COVID corona has come from eclipse images of fantastic resemblance. But be aware, there is no link with the COVID corona with the solar corona. Don't go by some nonsense reports what you see in the media. What is required now is to do a multi-wavelength study. I'm just giving you snapshots of or sort of some impression that the kind of things which we do. Very recently, actually, but this is done by my former PhD student who is in US now, but this was a good big collaboration between US, India, China, and some Europeans and so on and so forth. What I'm showing here is different layers of the atmosphere of the sun. This is not a sunspot, but these are very, very highly concentrated, small flux tube concentration. This lower picture is taken from a ground-based facility from US. Then this is also a ground-based facility which is giving you the photospheric image which you have seen. Then as I mentioned, chromosphere is about say 1500 to 2000 kilometer, and then corona is beyond that. So these two are taken from, this is taken from space. This is again taken from the ground-based facility in US. It's called the Big Bear Solar Observatory. We were studying something called spicules. These are small little jets. But I'm just trying to impress. This is one of the really, really major solar publications which we have, and it has appeared in Science a few months back, which is our top-rated journal in Science in general. So it has made a lot of impact. But my point was just to show this, that this thing of multi-wavelength is a very crucial thing for modern day astronomy. That means when you look at combination of optical wavelength, because from the ground-based observations, you can see only optical wavelengths. But if you want to see ultraviolet or X-rays, you have to go to higher and higher, atmosphere, beyond Earth's atmosphere, primarily to the satellite platform. So this is again an example that why we need, combinations of data from different sources, and a modern day we do that. And thankfully, science have allowed us to communicate and collaborate with a lot of people across. This is again another very I would say most attractive element of choosing science as a career as well, because it allows you to interact with people from all across the globe, very, very, on a personal level, and then you can do some physical work also. Now, again, the story of the sunspots, I'm coming back. So this is, what is showing is the plot of number of sunspots for last 400 years. What is plotted in x-axis is a yearly sunspot number, and the y-axis, and the x-axis is time for last 400 years. So as you can see here, yeah, was there a question? Okay. So what is shown here is that the number of sunspots varies with time. So this is, of course, with the periodicity, roughly what you can see is 11 years. But then, although there is a rough periodicity of 11 years, the amplitude of these variations vary substantially. So there are alternating peaks. When there is a high sunspot number, we call it solar maxima. When the number of sunspots are very, very few, we call them solar minima. So these are the maximas and these are the minima. In fact, Samuel Schwabe, he started observing between this period, and then he was the first guy who discovered that there is a alternate peak in the solar activity, and he named it as solar cycle, and so it's also named after him as Schwabe cycle. So what I'm going to talk about today, rest of my talk is basically about this solar cycle. So this time variation is predominantly cyclic. Mean period is about 11 years. But there is another interesting thing to note here is between 1650 and 1700, there were hardly any sunspots recorded. So this is a very, very big mystery. This was first discovered by Maunder. It's called Maunder minimum. And the effect of this was there was extremely cold conditions in the earth. Volga River was frozen for 40 years. And there were extreme cold in Europe. Several thousands of people died out of cold weather conditions. So what it means is there is a direct impact. If the sun do not have enough number of sunspots, means there is something to do with the solar radiation. So if the solar radiation is less, then our climate is going to be very badly affected. So it is very important to study the long-term variations of the sun. Actually, the variations, what we are in our recent 100 years, what we have observed is typically of the range of from the minima to maximum, the total solar radiation which comes changing only by 0.1%. Now, the question is, if this 0.1% becomes 1%, say 10 times more, what would be the impact on our climate? This is also called the space climate. So we need to study, we need to extract data for last, how many centuries or millennium possible to, be able to do this modeling. For this, again, sunspot data is available for last 400 years. But again, with some limitations, which I will talk about. And in that context, actually, why in India we have Kodaikanal Observatory where this data is so valuable. This is again, sunspots are strong magnetic field regions. This is taken from a Japanese satellite image though, but it does show the photosphere. The other thing is interesting to note is the sunspots comes in a pair. They are also called active region because this is the active part of the sun, but they have a tilt. That means there is an angle between these two sunspots, which increases with latitude. Solar latitude means, you have the equator. I will show you more closer inspection, and you go to higher and higher latitude towards the pole. You see that the tilt actually increases with latitude. So you have more tilt when you have, at higher latitude, say 30 degrees or 35 degrees. When you come closer to the equator, you see this angle, the tilt is, becoming more, parallel to the equator and so on and so forth. This is a magnetic map of the sun as it sort of, in modern day we see it. There are always, you see bipolarity. You see these are called active regions. There is a pattern in the northern hemisphere that the yellow guys are to the right of the blue fellows or the green fellows, right here. So this polarity is to the right in the northern hemisphere, whereas in the southern hemisphere, it is just the opposite. So this polarity orientation in the two hemisphere is opposite. This is also something we have to understand from the origin of the magnetic field, how the sunspots are born and so on and so forth. So what we understand today is that the magnetic field erupts through the surface as tilted bipoles in two bands on either side of the equator. Individual region decay. This movie, it is again a movie. What it is doing is it is actually showing a one full solar cycle of these magnetograms, and then you will place it in a 2D plot, and then I will run this movie. You will see it when there is a maxima kind of thing. You have lots of sunspots. And then with the minima, there is hardly any sunspot, and one or two, if it is there, they're closer to the equator. And then again, the new cycle begins. You have lots of sunspots. Then again, during the minima, you have very few sunspots, and the polarity rule. Also, what you see in the northern hemisphere is different than the southern hemisphere. There is also another important factor is the sun, as I mentioned earlier, is rotating around its own axis, but it is not rotating as a rigid body. It is rotating differentially. What it means is the equator is rotating faster than the poles, and that has a very big significance in the overall dynamics. You think about, I often give this anomaly that your body, you are standing upright, and then your tummy is being rotated faster than the head. So obviously you can imagine how there will be lots of shear and forces within that body, right? So sun undergoes that in the inside, in the convection zone. So what it here is shown is a 2D map of the locations of the sunspot and as it propagates through the different years. So here, this image shows that there is a sunspot which appears in some particular latitude, and then with the progression of time, with the progression of the solar cycle, these sunspots tend to appear more closer to the equator. So the stronger polarity goes towards this, but the weaker polarity goes towards the pole. So here, this diagram is called the butterfly diagram. So here, two things to be noted. One is the equatorward migration of the weaker field. Sorry, the equatorward migration of the stronger field and the poleward migration of the decayed diffuse field. This diffuse field, what is happening is this has a polarity of this yellow, and you see the polarity of the overall sun was blue in this particular cycle. But these yellow guys, they slowly eat up these blue fellows, and eventually the polarity also reverses. So this is a very, very interesting aspect of the sun, that the sun as a whole, it appears to flip every 11 years. So the solar cycle is actually not 11 years, but it is 22 years, because you have to explain two things. One is that the sunspot number is high at some point of time. Then there is a equatorward migration of the sunspots. So this is explained by the butterfly diagram. And the weaker field goes to the pole and the polarity reversal happens. So there are a lot of properties of the solar cycle has to be explained by this, by the entire magnetic field. What happens is, more schematically, I will explain this, that you start with a poloidal field, that you have a upright north to south r theta plane, a magnetic field. But because of the rotation of the sun, you generate a toroidal field. This is called, you have different systems in your, in a spherical coordinate system. I hope, some of you are familiar with that. So from the r theta, plane, you have to generate a, field which is in the phi plane. So that's what happens. The differential rotation is responsible for this generation of the toroidal field. But then toroidal field have to give back to the poloidal field, because, you please remember that this is a cyclic process. One is fitting the other. It's like a dynamo mechanism. So the mechanism which is responsible for explaining this is called a solar dynamo. So I didn't use this terminology. Now you can imagine that when you ride a bicycle, so one form of energy is getting converted to another form, and vice versa. So there has to be a cyclic, complete loop. Otherwise, your dynamo will not function. So here again, it has been depicted that, as I was saying, that these sunspot pair, with the progression of the solar cycle, the plus guys goes to the equator. Then actually they meet these negative guys and they cancel each other. That's how the solar minimum happens, because these fellows are killing each other. Whereas these negative fellows, they have moved to the polar region where the pre-existing polar field was positive polarity. So these negative guys will slowly eat up these positive polarities, and eventually the North Pole will become, have opposite polarity. So that's how the polarity reversal will also happen. And for this, there are other slightly, technical details. I think I will skip that. Otherwise, I will not be able to complete this talk. So this is again a sort of simulation which is done again a part in India and close to Kolkata. So I included this. So my colleague Dibyendu Nandi, who is there in IISER Kolkata. In fact, I'm a joint faculty at IISER Kolkata now. So some of us are involved, this kind of, work. But this was done many years back when, Dibyendu was started this when he was in the US, and he moved back to India. And then, some of these colleagues, Andres, in fact, Andres is guiding my now former student. He's a postdoc with Andres. So, and in community, we also work in this fashion. My student goes to, my collaborator's place and vice versa. So here, this simulation shows that how these, flux tubes, which are generated inside the sun, then because of the rotation, these sunspots are formed, and the number of sunspots goes higher. They go to the pole, and so on. I mean, I'm sorry, it needs much more time to explain each and every detail of this. But if some of you are interested, I will be happy to talk about it later. What I wanted to impress on you is this about this data archive, which is there in Kodaikanal, and I've been working with this for last 7-8 years now. Kodaikanal have been observing the sun for last 100 years. Of course, the Britishers, the famous discoveries have been made from Kodaikanal observatories. It was all maintained by the British scientists, but post independence, it was taken by Meteorological Department, and then subsequently in 70s, Department of Science and Technology took it over, and that's how Indian Institute of Astrophysics was born, where my formal training is from there. So there, what we have been looking at the sun from multi-wavelength. We have white light picture, we have calcium pictures, and we have H-alpha pictures as well. So I showed you those images from space in more modern era, but this data exists for last 100 years. This is a top, telescope. This telescope is more than 120 years old now. And since 1904, even today, one image is taken from this small little telescope. So you can see, and it's all manually done. No cameras in terms of, your mobile phone cameras and all that. Nothing is there. It's all the photographic plates still being used. In fact, we use extra film now to take images. So if you have happen to want to have a small little workshop or training school, this is the building which we use. And my digitization lab is behind this. There is also a small little nighttime telescope. It's all in a historical place, but they're great places. So these are the sunspot. If you look at modern day images and you think about this is the sunspot taken more than 100 years back, right? So there are a lot of processing which goes into this. I will not go into that. But what we produce finally is this. What has happened is this is again a very new paper. My former student who is in Max Planck Institute in Germany now. And we have now combined data from 13 observatories across the globe. So this is the phase which we are in. Earlier people used to work independently and, work with one station at a time. But then it is very difficult to compare your results with the results from another observatory. So now at this modern day, you think about how we are doing this cross calibration, a lot of hard work, and we see this. So this is the current, I would say, the state of, affair of the solar cycle in terms of the sunspot area. So I will not again go into the full details of the sunspot area thing. But here you can see for last more than 100 years, it's actually goes back beyond earlier than Kodaikanal as well, because we have taken some data from China and Russia and Germany and so on as well. And so this is the current state of affairs. And then you see the butterfly diagram. It does look like butterfly. I'm sure all of you will be appreciating this. So this is again, it's really the modern output, and this paper is just accepted a month back. But I thought I will just share our excitements with you. This is the calcium picture. From calcium also you can create butterfly diagram. So you imagine you have sunspots in the photosphere, and then a sort of replica of a sunspot like bright region in the atmosphere, which is 1500 kilometers above sun. From there also you could make this kind of butterfly diagram. This is what my other student has done, who is in the US now as well. There is a third data set which is called H-alpha. H-alpha shows you again some chromospheric features, and here it is compared with different observatories across the globe. Meadow is an observatory in France, so only the French observatory can actually compare with the data what we have in Kodaikanal. and all other data sets in whether it is in NSO, is the National Solar Observatory in US. This is the Russian observatory. This is the Big Bear Solar Observatory in US. This is the thing with Japan. NEOJ is another center in Japan. No, Hira is in China. Sorry, and this is in Japan. So you can see that how much data we have in India in the context of this particular study. This is how we detect filament. There are a lot of automated methods. We are applying artificial intelligence and machine learning and all that in this process. Earlier, people were very meticulous and was doing things in hand. And modern day, we don't want to do it. We don't have that much patience probably, but we have meta tools to do this. So there are a lot of sophisticated computer algorithms are getting into looking at the old data. You can generate butterfly diagram from H-alpha filaments as well. So essentially, I wanted to highlight that in India, we have built this repository. This is a typical example I have in the website of IAA that 1st January 58, if you go, you will find one image in H-alpha, which corresponds to, higher up in the chromosphere, the calcium K, middle chromosphere, and white light, ground-based. So what modern astronomy demands that, you have a multi-wavelength data sets. Kodaikanal is providing you this unique opportunity. And I'm happy that, this data have been able to make it to global community, public data, and there are lots of people across the globe, they are using it. So this is what I only wanted to emphasize in my presentation. This is termed as Deepu's gang, some of my students, but in this gang, some of them in last 1 year have all, migrated out. Sudeep is in Germany. This fellow is in US. She's in Oslo, Norway. This fellow is in Germany, in Belgium. This guy is in US. So I have lost most of these gang members, but new members have joined the gang. So this is the new gang composition. And thank you for your attention. Okay, Abhijit, I am done. I can take questions now.
Okay, thank you, Dipankar, for your nice lecture, and I hope there are already a lot of questions in the chat box. So now that session is open, I would invite the participants to put their queries and ask questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah. So, how sunspot data are available from 400 years ago? Like, is there telescopes, enough accurate telescope, or
Very, very
how-
good point. Yeah, very, very good point. So this has been the main challenge actually, that you see, you can observe a sunspot even by taking an image of with a pinhole camera. You can actually have a small little white paper sheet of paper. You make a cardboard and make a small little hole, and you get the sun, solar image. Now, as you rightly pointed out, so they have, Chinese were very meticulous, as you know, even today, and they have recorded those, objects. So in terms of the sunspot, presence of the sunspots and all that, there are reasonably reliable information. But as you rightly pointed out, how big they were, how, sort of how bright they were, these kind of things are very difficult to achieve. So that's why you saw our current publication, we could go only up to 1880, scientific major publication. But just counting, say, sunspot number, one were able to do it. In fact, since you asked the question, there has been always big challenge that, that during this Maunder minimum period, whether the sunspots were probably too small, or maybe, they were too weak. And if they're very weak, then the contrast will not be there in the image. You will not be able to detect it. So it is possible that during the Maunder minimum period, there were sunspots, but they were too few or too weak, so that it has not been recorded. So that's quite possible.
There is a point of accuracy also, like
absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's why there are a lot of difficulty of using only sunspot as a tracer of magnetic field. So there are other proxies people do it. There are cosmogenic, proxies people take, that they take carbon dating, then treating analysis. So these are done for those who are interested in studying the climate for more than 100 200 years. They do that.
And like these periods, are they related with some kind of like earthquakes? We have earthquakes, so sun quakes also we have. So the sunspot, they're related with this kind of sun quakes or any kind of relation?
So the sun also, as I mentioned, it also vibrates around its own body. So and apart from those oscillations which is observed on the sun, there are big explosions which relates to the sun quake. That's actually a different ballgame, but there are also seismic perturbations on the sun. But solar things probably do not have a direct impact on earthquake. I would put it that way. Okay, so Earth is too far away from this. So gravitationally, we do not have that much of influence on Earth's, internal structure. And as you know, the Earth's magnetic field changes very, very, very slowly. So the polarity reversal takes, millions of years and so on. We still do not know when the pole will reverse and so on. So earthquake is a different, of course, these are seismic disturbances within the internal structure of Earth. But they have no direct link with solar variations.
Okay, sir. Sir, I have a last question. Like, we know that corona is the temperature of corona is higher than the temperature of sun. Yeah. There should be in the spectrum, there should be lot of emission from corona, and there should be signature for that also. Yes. So how can we distinguish that this signal is coming from the core of the sun or the sun, or it is modified by the emission from corona? Okay. Is there any
very, very good question? Yes. So as you rightly pointed out, see, there is also a big question why the atmosphere of the sun is much hotter than the surface. This is called the coronal heating problem. I didn't talk about it. I can spend full day on that because I work in that particular field. But as you rightly pointed out, if the corona, suppose it is hot because of the presence of other dynamics, there are waves which are responsible. There's something called magnetic reconnection, so small scale flares which are responsible for maintaining the temperature to millions of Kelvin. But when the temperature of an object is much, much higher, it emits actually in X-rays, much shorter and shorter wavelength, right? Yes. Or if you have optical elements like iron, it will be very highly ionized. So you can get a spectral line which will be iron 17 or iron 21 and so on and so forth. So since you asked this question, and if you know a little bit of spectroscopy, then you will have to use that part of the spectrum which only can record that iron particular ionized line.
Okay, or so I have to mention the band.
Exactly. Or you make a filter. You make an image filter which will allow you emission only into that particular narrow band. If I have, say, 171 angstrom, means it's only allowing plus minus 1 angstrom emission around that particular emission line. So all these, UV images, what you are seeing is actually taken from very narrow band filters. And those filters allows emission, which is only sensitive to that temperature. That's how we could say that this particular emission is coming from corona, because we know corona is 1 million. So then 1 million Kelvin plasma will emit, some particular ionized iron line and so on. That's how we distinguish.
Thank you very much, sir.
Abhijit, you are muted. Yeah. Who has the next question? I think there are lots of thing in the chat box, but I'm not following that. So you have to somehow we have to help. Abhijit, you are muted actually.
Yeah, Adarsh Kumar is there. Adarsh, you are not. Devorpita Jyoti is there. Devorpita I have some question.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Yeah, Devorpita, ask your question.
Hello, sir. I was wondering if there is any kind of correlation between energy conservation and the angle, like the angle between the two sunspots when it goes to higher latitudes as compared to equator. Is there kind of like energy conservation factor that is going on there, or why do we get different angles of sunspot? Is my question.
Yeah. So the different angle of sunspots is actually for a different reason. What is happening is when the sunspot you saw in one of those animation is coming from underneath the surface of the sun, it is also undergoing this differential rotation because sun is rotating. So there is a Coriolis force which is acting on the on that particular sunspot. Now with the dynamo progression, so these where exactly in which latitude it will come out or pop out in the surface is dictated by internal differential rotation, and there is something also called meridional circulation and the Coriolis force, which has a time dependence. So for that reason only, it is directly linked. So because the dynamic equation is a sort of is a transcendental equation. If you have solved any sine wave or cos combination, it is a periodic stuff. So it repeats it, after certain interval. So if you solve the dynamo solution and if you look at the Coriolis force effect, you will see that at different times the sunspot will pop up at different latitude. But now why they're more tilted and all that is also linked with this this effect of the Coriolis force and the differential rotation, because in the equator it is rotating faster, so it is stretched a bit more than in the higher latitude. Now, in terms of the conservation of energy, what you were speaking about, that actually comes into play in some other context. That this sunspot is an active region, so you have some amount of magnetic energy. You have some amount of, if there are motions, you will have some amount of kinetic energy and so on. So when this region, if it explodes, then those consideration comes that whether this magnetic energy will get converted into some other form that can lead to some heating, that can lead to certain acceleration of particles and so on. So that's how whenever there is a huge explosion in the sun, like this typical flares and all that happen, then those energy conservation question comes. Of course, then there is a rotation, helicity. There are much more a few more considerations one needs to take account. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next is Swastik Vishwas. Swastik, are you there? Maybe he lost the connection. Swastik is not there. Amartya Majumdar, you have some question. How do we calculate the age of sun?
How do we calculate the age of sun? Yeah, I mean, it's very hard. We really do not have means of have a direct, age estimate. But having said that, what people do is, as I was trying to indicate in the beginning, that there are many sun-like stars in the sky. So you look at similar, properties of sun with other stars, and then try to then estimate, what are the collective, their behavior. So this is something called, in that context only, its main sequence stars that it came. There's something called the HR diagram, where we put the stars based on their different age and color and certain other observing properties. So from that knowledge, we estimate that probably this is the age of the sun. But then again, the sun-like stars stays in the main sequence for millions of years. So we really do not know what phase of this we are in main sequence, whether we are in the early phase and all that. That to some extent again comes from the some theory about the rotation and the magnetic field and so on. Because when when the stars are born, it is from the interstellar medium, so it gets compressed. So it comes with some amount of rotation, some amount of magnetic field. So these measurements also give you some indication that how old is sun.
Okay. Some other questions from Ovik. Ovik is asking that whether the butterfly, what are the significance of butterfly diagram? Okay.
Very good point. See, as I mentioned, that the dynamo theory has to explain why there are at certain times more number of sunspots and why there are no sunspots at all in certain time. Butterfly diagram also has to explain that why the sunspot, I think this was already asked as a question, why the sunspots appear at the high latitude in the beginning of the cycle and at the, it goes down to the equator with the progression of the cycle. So what happens from the butterfly diagram, you see, when a new cycle again begins, then sunspots start appearing from the high latitude. So when you look at the butterfly diagram, you can make out which part of the, now we are in the solar minimum. So whether a new cycle has started or not, you can identify by looking at the butterfly diagram. It appears now, actually, right now, in some day, there are sunspots which belongs to the old cycle, and there are sunspots in, say, in certain week for the new cycle. So you can imagine that. So the new cycle sunspot should appear as a higher latitude, whereas the old cycle sunspot should appear as a low latitude. So when you construct the butterfly diagram, then you realize at which phase of the solar cycle you are in, because this again has an important consequence, and when the polarity reversal will happen and so on and so forth, because polarity reversal happens during the minimum period.
We have another question from Pradeep Chakraborty. Pradeep, are you there? Pradeep Chakraborty. Pradeep, are you there?
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes.
I have a question, sir. In
Yes,
the
sir.
differential rotation, sir, in the differential rotation of sun, whether the North Pole and the South Pole rotate in different rate, or they rotate in different direction?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what happens is it cannot rotate in different direction. The direction of rotation is same,
Yes,
but the magnitude has some variation in the North
Then-
Pole and South Pole also. So this is not always symmetric. Sun actually is not symmetric. There are a lot of asymmetric things also we see in terms of
Yeah.
the sunspot, where it comes and the sunspot number and so on. I did not talk about it at all, but it's a very good question. So the rotation profile, if you look at, means, you have a rotation profile that the equator is rotating faster and the pole is rotating slower. So there is a, profile of this.
Yeah.
That profile also has a depth dependence, which I did not talk about it at all. So this is the surface thing which I am talking about. So if you go interior also,
Yes.
then you will also find a different profile. And eventually, our understanding is we cannot really go very deep into the sun, but we have a lot of means to
Yes.
know about the interior of the sun also. We know probably absolutely in the core, the sun is rotating more as a rigid body. Yeah. So these kind of things
Yes,
are
sir.
there.
That means they rotate in different dates.
Sun is rotating differentially, and there is some difference in the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere in terms of the rotation speeds.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, Priyanshi Jain is having some question. Priyanshi is here. She's asking, what is the correlation factor when we compare KSO data with other observatory like ARGEO and Big Bear Solar Observatory?
Okay, so that will depend on what you are trying to correlate with. So typically we find a pretty good correlation above 95% for, again, sunspot area and so on. But then again, there are other parameters one has to look at as well. Yeah.
Kumar Shaha is asking, sunspots are increasing in number every year. Is the temperature of the sun reducing? Interesting.
Okay, good point. It's a good guess. So what happens is, if you say really the temperature of the sun, because sun is the main sequence star, and not really too much changes are happening inside, the surface temperature on an average is considered to be 5,700 degrees. That temperature change is marginal, but locally there is a difference in temperature. Since you pointed out, sunspot actually is a very highly concentrated magnetic field region. And what it does is, it doesn't allow the energy which is coming from underneath the sun to propagate through that very efficiently. So eventually what happens is that the sunspot area is slightly cooler than the surrounding. So this is a fact that sunspots are cooler than the surrounding. So to get you to your question, if you have lots of sunspots, collectively, you may have a slight, decline in the total radiation which is coming out. That's why I mentioned that, that if the sunspot number drastically changes and so on and so forth, there will be some effect change. But there is actually a dichotomy here, because when sunspots are there, associated with sunspot, there are a lot of plages also. I did not talk about it, but since you asked this question, I have to clarify this, otherwise it will always create a confusion. So when there are sunspots actually decreases the emission, but the surrounding areas, they brighten up. So when there are more sunspots, actually the radiation output of the sun will be actually slightly increased. Whereas if there are no sunspots, then the total radiation will be slightly less. That's why during the Maunder minimum, we had an effect of cooling in the Earth environment. So although locally a sunspot is a cooling agent, but globally the effect is actually just opposite. Yeah, Abhijit, you are muted, so I can't hear you.
Sir, so that is, we can say about the conservation of energy also. It is also dependent on conservation of energy. So one spot is cooling down and the surrounding is brightening up to.
Well, the surrounding, but they are not equally distributed. So if you look at the filling factor and so on and so forth, the surrounding area where plages are, they cover more surface area than this. Unfortunately, the solar environment is doesn't follow the full thermodynamics also. So entire thermal processes cannot explain. There are a lot of non-thermal processes which are responsible for the overall dynamics. So your standard thermodynamic equations are violated there, unfortunately. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, another interesting question. Somebody is asking that can we calculate after how many years sun will die, and is the sun became a black hole after its death?
Yeah, so that actually depends on, you see, there is, something called a Chandrasekhar limit and so on. So that dictates a star, whether it will end up at what stage and so on. So in the case of the sun, we have certain estimates. So it will be more than millions of years. So we don't need to worry about. But, once we capture different phases of a stellar evolution, then it becomes slightly easier to sort of predict this final state of this particular star. So in the case of sun, that accurate things are not possible because that not much change is happening. If sun becomes a red giant and so on, then probably we will have a much more data to rather predict a little better what will be the final stage, when will that happen and so on. Yeah, but the rough estimates are all there.
Well, Manisha Bosch is here. Manisha, are you here? There is a question from her end that is there any connection between solar minima and occurring of eclipse?
No, there is no connection at all. Eclipses happens because of the our relative positions of the moon and the earth and the sun. Our moon doesn't know actually what is happening in the sun. So it just happens because of the three-body system and the 5-degree angle between the ecliptic and the lunar orbit and so on. It has no connection.
Yes. Can sunspots help us predict the solar weather?
Yes. What you call by solar weather, this is something, let me clarify. So there is a terminology called space weather. So the solar weather means, if you mean that there is something called also solar storms. So these are, of course, directly linked with the presence of the magnetic field on the sun. And when you have sunspots, you have more magnetic field on the sun, and then interaction between the different magnetic regions lead to a lot of explosions, flares, and that leads to solar storms. And that is very much affecting our space weather. Means, all these highly energetic particles, coronal mass ejections. So these are the things which I did not talk about it today, but some other time, hopefully. Yeah.
Okay, and finally, someone is, everybody, perhaps it's a question from everyone that please suggest some books from where they can learn something more.
Okay, yeah, it all depends on which level you are. You know, this is what is the most important. So what I would suggest is you send me an email, and then there are. So if you are already have completed BSc and so on and so forth, there is Fundamentals of Astrophysics, is a very nice book by Arnold Raichudhuri. And so if you just give a quick Google search, you will find Professor Arnold Raichudhuri from Institute of Science. You can get that paperback in pretty cheap edition also. And depending on your sort of background, the textbooks can be suggested. So don't hesitate to write an email to me. You will find my email addresses in Google.
Should I type it here, or I can
Sure. You can share that.
DIPU @aries .res.in, right? So it's there. The address has been given to you, and you can write to Professor Banerjee with a tagline that you have attended this JVN seminar. Then he will perhaps remember that he had given a talk here, and he will answer you back. And I would like to now we are just at the end of our seminar, so we would like to conclude here. And thanks once again, Professor Banerjee, for your wonderful talk, and we all are very much enlightened out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I could transpire something because it's hard, in this virtual media.
Absolutely, and we hope to get you in near future again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we are concluding the session now.
I see that there are some more questions, floating around. You can compile it and send it to me also. I can respond to that as well. So,
yes, that we can do. Sure. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.